back, fellow audio enthusiast. This is two-channel listening, and I am your host, Jason. For this particular episode, I am going to be covering off on opera loudspeakers. Now, opera loudspeakers have actually been around since 1989 when they had started with a particular partnership of an Englishman and an Italian. Now, opera loudspeakers has a design philosophy that meshes old world craftsmanship with sound design testing practices, pun absolutely intended. Now, opera loudspeakers, coincidentally, also operates under the same corporate banner that houses Unison Research, which is how I even learned of the opera loudspeaker company, is by owning Unison Research and looking for other types of products that are similar in that niche category. Trying to obtain an actual opera loudspeaker in the United States was much harder than I thought. These particular opera grand Mezzas, their entry-level tower speaker, I came about them based on the fact that they were the last of a liquidated new old stock inventory. It wasn't until actually very recently that I came across a US distributor, or I should say brand representative, that sells both the Unison Research line and the opera loudspeaker line. And that is the very cordial Mr. Jim Pendleton from Osage Audio out of Missouri. And I will put a link for Osage Audio in the description of this particular video. I definitely would recommend you check them out. They represent several different types of niche brands, as well as offer lots and lots of vinyl products. I have to say, I've always been candid with my viewership. I have absolutely been dragging my feet for weeks making this video of the opera loudspeakers, the Grand Mezzas. I have truly been not so much lamenting as struggling to find the proper words, the proper comparisons, and how to explain what I see has been my ownership with the Grand Mezzas, as well as where do they play in the grand schemes of the hi-fi audio world. At least for those of us who are in America, I am a religious user of Hi-Fi Shark, and I always try to bring brands that represent high value to my viewers. I can tell you that just from the used perspective and what comes up on the market, I have yet in the last 6 months seen one single pair of Grand Mezzas come available, let alone any of the upper level products that Opera Loudspeakers has in the United States. They just do not come up often, and this is an incredibly underrepresented brand in the US. I must apologize in advance for my non-car enthusiast viewers. Let's come up with the collective sigh, shall we, as I come up with another quick car comparison of trying to understand how I can describe these Grand Mezzas versus all of the other value products that I have in my stable, particularly the fact that I purchased my Tekton Uruz as configured, still waiting on my grills, for $1,625. While I got a smoking deal on these new old stock speakers, right now, if you were to go to Osage Audio, these would set you back $3,600 to buy brand new. How do I make a proper comparison? Well, if you take my good old-fashioned American Tekton Uruz, these are a 2002 Camaro Super Sport. They've got the awesome heart of the Corvette with the LS engine. And they also have the very robust T56 transmission. I would liken that to the Eminence driver and the very fine ribbon tweeter. Fantastic performing products. Yet the skin, when you look at the aesthetic appeal of the Tekton Uruz, like the 2002 Camaro Super Sport, it is a product that only the Bible Belt living moonshiners could love. On the other hand, when you look at these Grand Mezzas, these are like a fine 2017 Alfa Romeo 4C Spider. Yes, there's a magnitude order. They are a magnitude order more expensive, but that dollar amount is spread more evenly throughout the entire design of the speaker itself. Not only do you have this very handsome looking skinny tower, there's a good amount of design theory behind the cabinet itself. At particular termination points with the MDF front baffle, there are areas where it's nearly 2 inches thick. So you have MDF that is front to back, and it is covered in this very, very nice pleather material that also isn't just adding to its own sex appeal. The fact is that there is a particular damping characteristic with this faux leather finish. Now the sides themselves, they're actually solid wood. So this little tower comes in at a hefty 47 pounds for what it is. And it's a stout little unit. Then there's the drivers themselves. You have a full complement of CAS drivers. You have two 5-inch CAS woofers, a coated poly CAS mid-range, which actually is a different unit, has a much more robust magnet than the woofers. And then there's this darn tweeter. This ScanSpeak 260D is a sweetheart. While I have been on much of a ribbon tweeter kick ever since the Alta Ios, the Ascend Acoustic Sierra line, the Tektons, and then even my latest acquisition, which happens to have another Rawl tweeter outfit, I have to say this 260D ScanSpeak tweeter is just, it is what makes this speaker special. Interestingly enough, we find that when we're listening to new speakers in our stable, we naturally gravitate towards certain musical genres. Generally, I do my best to keep a full complementary mix of hard rock, classic rock, acoustic, jazz, symphonic. However, interestingly enough, I found that I started listening to more symphonic music through the Opera loudspeakers than I have since I've even started this channel. I was going from one composer to the next. Copland, Dvorak, Holst, Wagner, on and on and on. I just couldn't get enough of listening to the opera speakers with the symphonies. And there is just something very unique and special, probably at this price point, and something to do with the harmonizing and the design of this cabinet. That extra money, it was put into the damping characteristics of the speaker, in the fact that there is a certain level of refinement and vibration control, back to my comparison of the Alfa Romeo 4C. For any of those who don't know what the 4C is, you need to look it up for the monococoon chassis that it has. That entire car is built around a specific carbon fiber chassis, and it has all of its strength derived from that chassis. On the other hand, when you got an F-body Camaro, sorry, there's not a lot, if any, consideration for absolute vibration control in its chassis or cabinet. There's just not money left over because so much of it went into its transmission, its performance characteristics, and that lovely sweetheart engine. Yet, again, with the Opera loudspeakers, there is just something truly special above the 200 hertz region. Now I say specifically 200 hertz because in this well-crafted cabinet with a very nicely executed crossover, the two 5-inch CES drivers, they're given a very, very narrow dispersion. Basically, it's everything below 200 hertz is all that they have to focus on. So they don't have to work very hard. But at the end of the day, while this speaker does an admirable job of really bringing out woodwinds, bringing out the brass section, and strangely enough, I was actually listening to xylophones more than I've ever paid attention to them in the past. Once you get to the drum section, once you get to the timpani, well, our value leader shows why it's still a value leader. The drums hit hard, they hit fast, and your room is energized by the 10-inch driver of the Tekton Uruz. These little 5-inchers, they just can't energize at least my large great room. And they definitely show that they can't show up, or they definitely do not have any oomph below 42 hertz. I will say this, from an amplification standpoint, the Grand Mezzas are very easy to drive. I had no issues whatsoever comfortably driving them to mid 85 dB playback range with my 12-watt Class A tube amplifier. However, I would be remiss if I did not mention the absolute beautiful synergy of the Unison Research Unico P that I have. When I threw that 50-watt hybrid tube integrated against these speakers, there was something that was just beautiful there. The two Italians working in unison was a fabulous combination, and absolutely one of my favorite combinations of all the different speakers that I've had in my listening room to date. But I've struggled to keep my channel all about the highest value products I can find. And when it comes to all-out performance for dollars, there is another challenge that I have when describing where do these speakers belong? What system, whose system do these speakers belong in? Most recently, I picked up the latest iteration of Dennis Murphy's BMR monitor. Now, while that's a very large bookshelf speaker, hard to call that a bookshelf speaker on any terms as a three-way, it actually has the latest SB acoustic ceramic driver. It's a 6-inch unit, and that $2,000 rosewood pair of speakers plays into the mid 30 hertz region. And I'm telling you, that SB acoustic driver, it plays faster, it plays deeper, and it hits harder than the two CES drivers of this speaker. That's a very big challenge to my own philosophy of what is high value. And while I've dragged my feet for so long to come up with this review, who do these speakers belong to? I have to stop myself. I have to take a 30,000 foot view of the entire range of speakers that are available on the market today. And when you do that, there are two brands that come immediately to mind where these make sense as the direct competitor. If you've got $3,600 to spend on a beautiful cabinet, on a well-executed speaker, on something that definitely in the mid and upper range excels like nobody's business, all of a sudden you have to look at the speaker before you commit to anything from Sonus Faber, and especially before you commit to a Bowers & Wilkins 704S. Please, before you spend any money on a Bowers & Wilkins, look at the Opera loudspeaker lineup. You must have something that plays closer into the 30 hertz region. For another $1,000, the actual Secundos, those will get you into the low 30 hertz range. They drop the 5-inch CES, and then you get to bump up to a 7-inch CES driver. It is a heavier speaker, a little bit larger, that same gorgeous form factor, but for $1,000, you're getting, now all of a sudden, you're getting a speaker that can really play most of the symphony, and you do not have to integrate a subwoofer. And I know that's my soapbox. I don't mess with subwoofers. I hate integrating subwoofers. As someone who rotates through so many speakers and so much equipment, it's not even worth my time to try to dial in a subwoofer for every change that I make in my own system. So I look for speakers that I do not even have to think about adding a subwoofer to. It is what it is. It gives you what it's going to give you. Interestingly, while these look probably taller on camera, I have them lifted up so that you could get a better view of them. They're the same height as the Tekton Uruz. Yet with the dispersion characteristics of this ScanSpeak 260D, the voicing, and in particular female voices, they're projected almost, I would say, 2.5 feet to 3 feet higher than the speaker itself, which from a soundstage perspective is actually giving you nearly a spot-on performance of where that singer is standing on the soundstage itself. So when your eyes are closed and you're listening to your favorite female or male vocalist, you're actually hearing them from a more proper perspective of where they've been mic'd. And that, to me, was something very interesting I had not heard from many speaker designs that I've had in my room. The closest competitor to what it did would probably be the Meadowlark Swifts that are a time-aligned design with that slope baffle. These are arguably not sloped, but certainly with the way that it's crossed over, an incredible job of proper soundstage placement with the Grand Mezzas. And as far as the soundstage depth, again, a much more relaxed, silky smooth response, whereas the Tektons have a very forward, you are placed in the 8th row of your favorite concert. I would characterize the Grand Mezzas as being more between 10th and 15th row. In conclusion of this review, I'm going to make a bold statement. I'm going to make the statement that the Opera Grand Mezza, let alone the entire Opera loudspeaker lineup, while it has a very narrow targeted market, I'm going to say that that targeted market would be one of a higher appreciation level from actual musicians than Bowers and Wilkins products themselves. As always, your esoteric, quirky, weird product line reviewer. I appreciate your support, and I love the great feedback that I get from my viewers. I'm definitely an acquired taste for many of you. There's going to be some rather large changes to this channel in the coming months. There was an opportunity that came to me thanks to one of my audio friends that opened up a door that I absolutely can no longer close. I took a risk on a product at an estate sale, and it has destroyed my preconceived notions about ultra hi-fi. And unfortunately, when I reveal what that product is that's in my living room, there's no doubt I'm going to lose a fair margin of my viewers. There's just comes a time where, for the right money, you have to take the opportunity and you have to seize it. Yet, you are unaware of how much it's going to change your viewpoint and what you actually want to do moving forward in your own hobby. For me, this product has twisted my own value system on its head. And now I am struggling with how best to walk the fine line of maintaining awesome vintage products, but also finding the time to rotate in high value products. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that after I reveal what the product is, what the speakers are. More to come, especially on Instagram. Those of you out there who get it, thank you. Those of you who don't, you're not going to. It takes time and it takes investment. This hobby is worth it, and someday you will see too. Thank you, and until next time, have a wonderful week.